speaking of 5, Persona 5. Yeah, no. So we saw a trailer last week, and the internet flipped the fuck out.
Yeah, with good reason. Persona's awesome.
Video game people are like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever.
Did you see the cat that turns into a cartoon cat and helps you on your journey? Come on, folks.
So yeah, I did see that there was a cat in this
Did you see the shadow jumping around the wall? You see jumping from chandelier to chandelier? Come
Tuxedo
the fuck
Mask
on.
is involved?
Yes.
Somewhat.
He looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I watched this trailer and I don't know what the fuck's going on. You know, I've been around you guys long enough to know that people like Persona.
Yeah.
You know, we've met a couple of the voice actors and actresses of
Aaron Fitzgerald, what up?
Exactly.
Troy Baker.
This is an important game, specifically
Series.
to the Vita. Like I would think.
Sure. Persona 4 Golden was incredibly important
You
to
guys
the
are all
Vita.
talking about Andrew Goldfarb's always like he won't shut the fuck up. There's all these things
Steimer
happening,
too.
right?
Platinum
Yes.
Club, yeah.
Why is Persona so important? I don't know anything about it. What the fuck is a Shin Megami Tensei? Educate me, Colin.
You want me to do it? Persona is important because, and we talked about this a little bit on Colin and Greg Live, and I think that the most proper way to put it is that right now in Japanese role-playing games there is a vacuum because Final Fantasy sucks and Dragon Quest is now an MMO for some reason. So, you know, Dragon Quest X is an MMO, and Final Fantasy 13 is just a rampant disappointment, right? The 3 Final Fantasy, like I know some people like those games, most people don't, and the sales showed for those 3 games that they're getting worse and worse, and so there's a huge vacuum. So Dragon Quest is in this weird space now. I'm sure Dragon Quest 11 will be a regular Japanese role-playing game, God willing. And I'm sure Final Fantasy 15 is going to try to rectify the situation, and Final Fantasy 14 obviously is an MMO, and they're doing very well. So this leaves a vacuum for that kind of player because unless you're into like Compile Heart games or Idea Factory or these random Japanese role-playing studios, which a lot of people aren't, or Spike Chunsoft or whatever, which make Danganronpa, which isn't a role-playing game, but then you really don't have much to play with the exception of Tales. And I think Tales is the only Japanese role-playing series right now that comes out almost on a yearly basis that is doing exceptional and the games are exceptional. Tales is Asteria. Just launched in Japan, and it sold like 400,000 copies in its first week, which is extraordinary considering no one is buying console games there anymore. So there, with this vacuum comes the height and the rising of Persona. And anyone who's attached to Japanese, that knows Japanese gaming like I do and has been there and has seen it and heard about it and read about it knows how fucking huge it's becoming. And I think that
everywhere, Persona's everywhere. Every shop we went into for last year when I was 2013 when I went to Japan with Scott and Christine and everybody, like every shop that had gaming stuff in it had Persona stuff. Whether it be, and I'm talking like their Walmart version, right? Their stores had like plush teddies, and then you'd go in, you'd find the little different the actual personas for the characters, which I know means nothing to you.
But I mean, is it like Pokemon-esque?
Yeah, let's
almost
back up for a second because you guys keep saying this like Tim and I have any point of reference on this whatsoever. Talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old that's never played a game before. What is Persona?
So Persona is a Japanese role-playing series that began on PS1, and it's by Atlas. So they're now owned by Sega, but Persona Team is the developer that makes these. So they're internal developer. They also made Catherine. So
is it like Catherine? Is that same visual style? Or
it
is
looks
different?
like it now.
Okay.
I think you would agree with that.
Yep.
That in Persona 5,
The trailer looked very
It looks
Catherine-ish.
very much like Catherine.
Okay.
Which is great.
But, you know, Greg is a Persona 4 fan, might be able to get more into the nitty-gritty. But
I mean, the easiest way to talk about it, right, is, I mean, from just a gameplay mechanic, it is similar to Pokemon. Instead of having your Pokemans and their Pokeballs or whatever, you have basically personas on cards or whatever that you throw in front of you that you then use to fight battles with. And this is Persona 4. Obviously, as you go back, Persona 3, if you ask
Card
me,
captors.
Persona, you summon your Persona to fight for you, right? Persona 3 was the fucking best because what they did is pulled out spirit guns and shot themselves in the head. And then the Persona would come out and fucking fight for them, and I was like, yes! And so now when your guy throws the card in front of him in Persona 4, you're like,
Wow.
not
quite
nearly as
hardcore.
cool as shooting yourself in the
All right,
head.
cool. So that's the gameplay.
You and I have a
This-
very different definition of cool.
But I mean, it was just badass.
cool.
I'm just like, oh, you want to fuck with me? Boom.
So the
pretty hardcore.
franchise, what is Shin Megami Tensei then? Is that like is it the equivalent of like Final Fantasy and then there's all the different Final Fantasies?
yeah, I don't know the exact translation of Shin Megami Tensei, but there are other Shin Megami Tensei
Exactly.
non-Persona games that I think take place in this. So they're like Devil Summoner on PS2 and stuff like that. I think it's the overarching series, and the Persona is one branch of it.
Okay.
So there's like other branches, and you can, people that are curious in Shin Megami or SMT games can go on PSN because Atlas has made many of them available as PS1 and PS2 classics. So you can go download and try them for $5 or $10 a piece, depending on which one you get. So I think that Persona is just the main line Shin Megami Tensei series.
Okay.
And then
is
the
that just
Persona-
because of the popularity of it that it became the main line, or was that always kind of the intention?
No, I think that the first Shin Megami Tensei game was Persona. So I don't know if there was, and I think that was a PS1 game. So I don't think there was spin-offs until after that, but I could be wrong. I am certainly not a scholar on Shin Megami Tensei.
So there was Persona 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 was on PS2.
Right.
Correct.
And was it a big deal then?
To JRPG nerds, it was that, like, for me it was, I was working there at the time. Jeff Haynes was reviewing it. It came out on PlayStation 2, and Jeff was our JRPG guy. Like, he loved him. And he had got me started on Persona 3. And then Persona 3, when it came to PSP, I reviewed it because, for the Fez edition or whatever, just because I was up to, or Pez or whatever. I was up to date on it and knew what it was at that point. But yeah, when it came out, it was a big deal with JRPG nerds, but it wasn't like it is now. Like, we're talking earlier with Dying Light, and Dying Light coming along at the right time, being the right kind of thing. Vita Momentum had pretty much fallen off. There were no big titles. And then Persona 4 Golden is the one that came out and was like, here is a 100-hour game. You know what I mean? Here's this giant RPG to play and replay. Like, you know what I mean? You beat it once, you go back. There's a very specific sequence you need to do to get to the true ending, let alone get to the true epilogue, to do all these different things. Like, there's so much game there, and there's so many side quests and so many different things to branch off and go do, that it hit at a time when people were like, man, I bought this Vita, and what am I going to do with it? And not only did it hit in a sense that it was like, all right, great, the JRPG mechanics are great. People loved it for the story and the characters, right? Like, this version and the performances of, Aaron Fitzgerald, Troy Baker, like we were talking about before, right? Like, you come to love these characters, and they drop in the anime cutscenes here and there, but way too sparingly. I wish there was a lot more of them. But you get dropped into this world where you are going through and doing these different things. And, because it is this weird mashup of, you have we're going into the television world to fight these shadows. Like, this is what's up. They're taking over our town. We're trying to solve this murder mystery. However, we're also going to school. We also need to pick what girlfriend we're going to have. We also need to make dinner or make bento box lunches.
This sounds good.
Bring them out. Like there's a girlfriend. And then you're rewarded by what you do. So like after school, you choose who you want to hang out with and not even go fight the bad guys. That ups your social rank, which then makes your persona stronger, which then unlock, there's all these weird things, not weird, but like all these mechanics to it that if you fall down the hole, you're just going to keep tumbling. You know what I mean? And that's what everybody you talk to who's crazy about it, like when you talk to Christine, when you talk to Alexa, when you talk to Mitch, like these are people who started playing it and then 60 hours was gone. It's a weekend where all they did was play. Colin always tells a story of when Christine got hooked, when she would not stop playing, and we went to Hard Knocks for like roommate dinner, and she brought it with her and was just sitting there playing in the car at the table doing all these different things. And it's one of those games that once its hooks are in you, it's so hard to let go of. You know what I mean? Like, you play through this game, right? And when you go into the TV world, obviously you're doing different equipment, you're using different weapons, you're unlocking, buying things as you go. You can unlock a knockoff version of the Power Rangers. So you are all dressed as Power Rangers in different colors.
Obviously, I want that.
Obviously. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. It's a game that has all these different ways to get you totally lost and addicted to it.
Yeah.
Whether it is like, who am I going to romance, or what am I going to do after school, or how do I get that fox to like me, or how do I catch that fish?
How do you get the fox to like you?
Yeah, there's this dumb dog I'm supposed to get. I know he likes meat. How do I get him back to his owner? There's all these different things to it.
All right. So my other question on this is, Persona 4 was on PS2, was later released on Vita, and that made it an even bigger deal to...
That I really think knocked it into the Western mindset, outside of just JRPG nerds. Because again, I didn't know anything about Persona until I came to IGN. Persona 4 or Persona 3 gets handed to me by Jeff or whatever. You need to play this. And then Persona 4 came. I think I had just finished Persona 3, I was late to it. Persona 4, he started playing. I wasn't ready to jump into it. Then it came to PSP. Not as big a deal, but people are starting to wake up to the fact that it's cool.
Do you need to play 3 to play 4 or 1 or 2?
No.
Is it like Final Fantasy that everyone is a completely new
The
story?
one thing is Igor. He's if you in the trailer.
So it's like Sid.
Sure.
Is it like Sid?
It sounds like it, yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar enough to know, but yeah, I know that character.
He's the guy in the velvet room. He's the guy with the hook nose. He looks all devious. He's in the Persona 5 trailer. He's like your conduit every time to like. He's like the Crypt Keeper. If there's going to be a Persona story, he's involved with it, telling you how to use your Persona.
And Sid is what Tim's talking about is in most Final Fantasy, not most, I guess, a lot. So like 4 and 7, for instance, is always a character, it's a different character, and the new one, Sid's a woman in Final Fantasy 15.
Gotcha.
So it's just like there's always just a
There's
character
always
named
a
Sid.
character.
Okay,
named Sid.
I gotcha. And then they only come together for like Persona 4 Arena or the Persona 4 dance or Persona dancing game or Persona. You know what I mean? Like they do like they have
the Smash Bros of Persona.
They have so much cool shit in the Persona universe that's how they can bring it together.
Yeah,
and
Arc
do cool
System
stuff.
Works, I think, is the one that makes the Persona fighting games, which people fucking love.
I can't wait for this dancing game.
And they're making a game called Dancing All Night, which is a Vita exclusive game.
Dancing All Night.
Yeah.
Cool.
Rhythm game, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Okay, so when we say that this game was big on Vita, how big was it?
Sold almost 1 million copies on Vita.
1 million copies
is
on
insane
Vita.
for
Yep.
Vita. Yeah.
How many Vitas are sold?
Maybe 10 to 12 million. Sony doesn't say much. The attach rate's huge. It's probably 10% plus.
That is insane.
And it's sold almost 1 million copies on PS2. So the game's about probably a little south of 2 million worldwide total. Digital PS2, retail PS2, obviously. Digital PS2, of course, on PS3, and then the Vita version, retail and digital.
All right. So then Persona 5 is now coming out on... It was originally announced on PS3. Now it's also announced on PS4.
Yep.
Not announced for Vita yet.
It won't come.
It won't.
And you don't think it's
You
going
can't
to
run
Vita?
it. You
No,
can't
I
run
don't
on the
think it's
Vita.
gonna work.
Okay. Are you excited for this, Colin?
I am. I mean, that's what makes me want to go back and play Persona, because my whole thing was always with Persona 4 was that I know the game's great. I trust everyone that tells me the game's great. And I'm also a big JRPG fan. It's just that...
And a Vita fan.
And I'm a huge Vita fan. I really did want to save Vita, assuming that it was going to die much quicker than it has been dying. The last game I play on it, but I cannot wait any longer. What I'm most interested in is that I think this is the game that reaches critical mass where Persona reaches the mainstream.
You're saying Persona 5 is the
Persona 5, yeah. Like, it's obvious to me that the
Is
game's...
this the Final Fantasy 7?
It could be. I don't think it's going to be as big as Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII was a cultural phenomenon that it did open JRPGs up as a genre to the masses, which some people liked and some people didn't, right? Final Fantasy VII is overrated in a sense because it's not the game I would have wanted people to play to get into JRPGs. That said, it is a fantastic game. But with Persona, it all comes back to what I'm saying about the vacuum, right? That's created. The reason that a game like Tales of Exilia comes out and does really well, or Ni no Kuni, is because no one has any JRPGs of a good quality to play. And I don't care what people out there say about, certain Japanese role-playing games that come out that they really like. A game like a lot of the games coming out of certain publishers, whether or not you like them or not, are not of the quality of Ni no Kuni, for instance, right? Like NIS or Compile Heart or whatever are not releasing Ni no Kuni quality games. So you only get a game like Tales or a game like Ni no Kuni or something every so often, and people buy them because that's what they want. It's clear they want them. And back in the SNES and PlayStation 1 eras, we had many of those.
It was a glut.
Like many scores even between those two systems of good Japanese role-playing games. You do not have that anymore, right? Ni no Kuni is by far the best Japanese role-playing game of the PlayStation 3 era, by far. So to me, Persona 5 is coming out at the right time, assuming it comes out. I don't think it's going to come out this year, but assuming maybe it comes out this year or maybe by mid next year, the game's going to sell millions of copies. Like I'm telling you, the game's going to sell millions of copies. And the reason it's on PlayStation 4 is to appeal to the Western audience, which lets me know that Atlus is cognizant that they have to make this game available for a Western audience that is becoming hungry and insatiable for Persona. Meanwhile, the PlayStation 3 iteration will exist for its domestic market, where it's going to sell 1+ million units in its first day, probably on the market. Nonetheless, more than that. And again, I was talking about Tales of Hysteria. A Tales game comes out every year to 18 months, and it's still sold 400,000 copies, right, in its first week. Persona hasn't come out since 2008, right? So it's almost like the Grand Theft Auto of the Japanese role-playing games, where there's anticipation and people are waiting. Persona 5 is going to sell like fucking gangbusters. I'm telling you that like I think a lot of people like doubt it or whatever. Persona 4's numbers are going to get destroyed by Persona 5's. I can't imagine it going any other way. There are people that are authentically excited about this game all over the world, and
you saw it on our Twitter feed, right?
It was
people who
trending
never talked about
worldwide.
Persona 3 or Persona 4 before Golden now are talking about it.
It was trending
Granted, different
worldwide,
world.
dude.
Yeah, exactly. But like you see it now that like there is a knowledge base for it, and part of that is the fact that you had hardcore Vita players, or not even people bought Vita, right, who are hardcore gamers, quote unquote, and then when this game came around, it's like, well, I have nothing else to play, so I'll play this and see, oh my god, it's great. And then even if you didn't play it, you hear people you respect and trust saying how great it is. Now it comes to a platform you have that, again, right now you're desperate to play things on. Yeah, you're gonna be great.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, the timing is going to be everything, I think, with this game. Like, I don't know. It's unclear what the nature of the game is in terms of how complete it is, because Catherine came out in 2011, I think. that was the same studio, and they made that game after Persona 4 to take a break, and then they moved on. So assuming the game has been in development for maybe 4 years, including pre-production, the game should be close to finish. And we were reading a letter from the director and producer over in Japan. He wrote to the fans being like, I hope you like what you saw and stuff like that. And what I began to appreciate is the immense amount of pressure the studio is under. Yeah. Because Persona 4, to a lot of people, is so immaculate that they, like, I cannot fathom the kind of pressure they're on, because it's the antithesis of what's going on with Square Enix right now, with Final Fantasy 15, where it's like, just make a game better than Final Fantasy 13, which shouldn't be hard, and you're on the right path. With Persona 5, it's like, make a game better than Persona 4.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, I don't have any context for it, but to a lot of people, I think that's going to be hard. But I think that they can do it. I think what's going to be really interesting with this game is how it resonates in the West, which I think it's going to resonate very much, and that it seems like Atlas and Sega is smart enough to know we need to proliferate this on all PlayStation platforms. It is still a PlayStation exclusive, but it's a game that is going to reach its audience in Japan on PS3 and in the West on PS4. And I think that that's going to be really, really important for them, because it's not going to be stuck on PS2. Remember, the game came out on PS2 in 2008, right? So in Japan and in the West, which is insane. Mm-hmm. And it's still sold almost 1 million copies. So imagine if that game came out on PS3 in 2011, or something like that, around when Catherine came out, and Catherine sold very well too. So I'm really interested commercially to see how this game does, but I do appreciate the crushing weight that the studio must be under to deliver, and I think that's why they're quiet. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why they finally are showing the trailer now and showing gameplay for the first time. The game looks fucking awesome. Like the art style in the game looks beautiful.
Yeah, cool.
The systems look really dynamic and cool, and obviously the story's quirky and eerie. So I'm super interested to hear it. But I think people that are doubting that this game is going to sell millions of copies,
crazy.
I think I'd be shocked if it didn't. I'd be absolutely astonished. It's going
He'll
to sell.
Eat that shirt if it doesn't.
It's going to clear 1 million copies in Japan by itself. So it's a matter of like what it will do in the West.
Yeah. It all depends when they release it, I think.
Yeah.
Back to this, right? If you put it up against Uncharted 4, you're going to have trouble.
I get the business side of it, but do you think that it not being on Vita is an issue, specifically since so many people first experienced Persona on Vita?
No.
I don't think so. I think it's the opposite. I think that if Persona 4 Golden came out on PS3 and Xbox 360, it would have sold millions of copies. I think the fact that it was like locked on PS Vita meant that some people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, went out and bought a Vita for it. But I think that many more people didn't play it because they don't want to buy Vita.
Yeah.
I think it planted a seed. It planted a seed, and it grew with people who had never played Persona 4, who are now talking about how great Persona is. So everyone knows Persona 4 is great. And most people say that. Like, like Twitch was yelling at us when we were talking about Persona too long, right? But majority of people who don't have any interest in JRPGs at least know Persona's awesome, so I don't have to worry about it, right? Well, and now it's just like a couple years ago at GDC, Brudvig, when he was still working at EDAR, did a speech about how review scores don't really matter in terms of what you get. It matters in terms of like people knowing your game exists. So that even market research shows that even if GameX gets a horrible review score and people see it in there, they make a connection to buy that over a game that they've never heard of that maybe is a 10. Same thing here. Persona now means something. That name means something in the West. And I think that's a great move for bringing out your next one, your big one, and showing it off.
So besides that, though, just like gameplay wise, though, don't you think that it loses something that Steimer can't just take it with her wherever she goes? Like, isn't it that addictive quality? Because like for me with Pokemon, that was the thing, is the fact that I could take it anywhere.
Sure.
And you can never stop playing. You can always do a little bit more. Like, it's, to me, from what I understand of people with Persona, I watch them play and they're just like, they just need that thing, and it's an airport game, and it's all that stuff.
Sure, but that was one of those things that, let's keep it in timeline context, right? That originally started as a PlayStation 2 console game that captured hearts and minds, and then it just moved to a platform that was portable. And Persona 4 Golden on Vita gets away with a lot of shit that if it was trying to be on PS3 or PS4, people would be like, graphics suck. Why is this? Why isn't there more voice acting? Down the line. Just watching the trailer for Persona 5, I told Colin about it, I think on the show, of just like, I never thought about it. I never thought about what Persona was going to look like on current gen
experience.
As a console thing, right? Because my experiences were PS2, which was basic to begin with, and then PSP, and then Vita. Mm-hmm. So I mean, those are like, I'm always playing it on a system that isn't top of the line. Mm-hmm. To see, like we were talking about, Tuxedo Face jumping around, how good the anime looked. I keep talking about it. The overhead, the top down look at like the Catherine table. Like, I still think, like that, them at the table to me is very clearly them at the status screen right before you go into wherever your dungeons are, right? You gather everybody together before you go out on your quest. And like for me, in Persona 4 Golden, the game I've put however thousands of hours into, is just them statically sitting around like this, right? And like a little bit of motion like this and looking like PS2 Vita characters, you know what I mean? To see it up there and have them be living and breathing, it's like, holy fuck, you know what I mean? Like I didn't think about that. This isn't going to throw me off in terms of like, oh man, I can't take it with me. It's going to throw me off in the way of, no, I'm not going out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when that game comes in, like fucking figure out how you're doing all these shows and setting up your own live streams. Because if we're embargoed, I'm playing in the dark. You know what I mean? I'm just going to sit there and go crazy. And that's like, it'll be lights off experience because it's already showing me that it's moving towards that, like I was talking about it, an experience level of looking good, playing well, and telling me a story outside of just reading text bubbles over and over and over again, and like trying to fill in some of the gaps in what I imagine Chie and my guy are interacting like. I want to see all that, and if that's what they can give me,
Well, that sounds
very excited, Tim.
Yes.
Yeah, it's worth being excited again because the genre just has not been given the due it's needed to be given from the studios that need to be giving it its due. Bandai Namco is doing an admirable job with the Tales series again. We get these one-offs like Ni no Kuni, which is also from Bandai Namco. And remember that Ni no Kuni on PS3 sold over 1 million copies.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and I believe just in the West. I remember when on MPD, the month after it came out, it would have charted. If same thing with Tales of Exilia, if it was by a SKU basis, which is fucking insane. Like that for a game like that. So the appetite is there. And I think that what's important for them is to take their time. It seems like they're going to be able to take their time. I think Atlas and their parent company Sega knows that they need to take their time. And if it's going to take 2 more years to make the game, then just take 2 more years to make the fucking game. The thing that's going to be painful for I think people like Greg especially is the game is going to come out in Japan first. So like I don't think
that's why I've been learning Japanese.
Yeah.
Konnichiwa.
The game
Sumimasen.
It's sad. Like I don't think it's going to be this huge gap. I think Persona 4 came out in July 2008 in Japan and then November 2008 or something like that or December maybe in 2008 in the United States. So I don't think it's going to be more than a few months. Bad. But that market is their priority.
What was the golden gap? Because I remember when Aram came by to show it to us the first time from Atlas, it was all in Japanese and he had explained what was happening.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't think it was ridiculous though, because I had sales figures like I want to say spring and then it was fall. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, I think it'll be about a 6-month wait, but I think the game comes out. It's going to come out first in Japan. It's just something that people are going to have to deal with. It would be awesome, and I think forward thinking if that wasn't true. But I think that it's the way it's going
day and date worldwide.
That would be awesome. But I don't think that's going to wait to happen. I think it'll be very forward thinking to do it that way. But yeah, man, keep an eye out on this game. I think that this is what people want. And what I'm really excited about with this game is that it's going to up the ante in a substantial, not only critical way, but a commercial way, where other Japanese role-playing houses and publishers are going to understand what they need to do. And it seems like maybe Square's learning that with Final Fantasy 15. Hopefully they learn that with whatever Dragon Quest 11 is. There are other studios laying in wait making their games, and this game looks like it's going to up the production ante and the gameplay ante in such a way and hype the hype ante where I think that everyone's going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
Ultimately. Because they're going to realize that you can't release these games that look like PS2 games that have derivative characters that are literally getting 3s and 4s from websites that are selling only to 40 or 50,000 people when you can make a game like this.
Yeah.
And sell millions of copies. So I'm actually more intrinsically I'm excited to play the game, but I am really interested to see how it resonates. And how it does. Because I'll be shocked if it doesn't outpace Persona 4
Replacing Teddy with
quickly.
a cat is probably a good move.
Yeah,
People
probably.
like cats
People
a lot.
like cats a lot.